Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, Ryan, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Nice to see you.
Yes, likewise. So, Ryan, tell us about yourself, your position at Alive, and a little bit about the company.
Yeah, thank you. And excited to have a chat with you about this. I'm president or CEO and group publisher of Alive Publishing Group. Been doing that for 17 years. It's been a full circle journey, which is a fun thing to chat about. But I started at Alive Publishing Group as the president around 17 years ago, and there was a parent company, Telbon Media Group, at that time. So after 3 years, I'd earned the opportunity to kind of step up into the parent organization and ended up running the entire group, which was much more sizable, and went through lots of ups and downs and lots of things I can share with you from experience at that point of divesting from business units to acquiring companies internationally, US, etc. But ultimately, 2.5 years ago, I split apart the parent company, Telbon and Alive, the business I sit in today, and we sold both companies, and I became an employee again of Just Alive, not just, but Just Alive, about 2.5 years ago. So I'm full circle back with 35 employees and kind of the largest, but not very large, big fish, small pond, natural health and wellness publisher in the world.
That's phenomenal, Brian. Yeah. And if I recall correctly, you're on the West Coast, so you're out of BC, correct?
I am, and I didn't tag to it, but personal passions, very, very passionate about some sports. So I spent a lot of time over my skis and on a mountain bike, and very much my passion, my artistic passion is cookery, is chefing. And then I'm a part of a group called YPO, it's a Young Presidents Organization, and I just actually finished as the chair of YPO for the province of British Columbia. So which is peer development, leadership,
right,
learning, transparency, friendship. Yeah.
Exactly. That's phenomenal. And so I'd love to dive in a little bit further. So you talked about divesting, merging acquisitions, winding down, winding up businesses. Tell us more about your leadership learning experiences throughout those environments.
Yeah, and that's great. And I was excited to join the podcast all the way through and chat with you, because I feel like it's actually something I can add a little value to. We were joking a second just before we were jumping online, but I started a long time ago. I was a young guy, and from a leadership perspective, one of the things I realized is that and one of my coin lines is that you can't fake experience. So, when I was first jumping into the role, I could have energy, I could have vitality, I could have leadership skills, but I'd never been through a recession. I'd never led change. I never acquired a company. I'd never done any of these things. So, first acknowledging that was a big point of personal growth for me, was just accepting the fact that I didn't bring that experience. So how was I going to surround myself and gain that experience, with having, peers and leadership around me. And at the same time, just being comfortable with the fact that I could ask questions and say, I've never done this before. So, so when I opened myself up to being vulnerable, in those positions, and that's what I went ahead and did. I hired for experience. I rounded out, my vice president was a mentor and actually teacher of mine when I went through university, a fellow named Cratch, and he became my vice president. And he had, the most experience of anybody I knew, and had so much wisdom that he could share with me through a lot of the early stages and journeys. And then at the same time, what I was able to focus on was what I was good at, which was just, my transparency and my connections with people, which was really staff and customers, I suppose, too. But so with the staff, I was just able to connect with them on a personal level, see what made them tick. And when I was able to do that, I found that certainly on the companies I was currently leading, pre-acquisition, I was able to get more out of the employees than they'd maybe been able to give in the past. They were becoming better versions of their work self, and I hope personal self. We've seen in the past. So we're getting more out of the same people. They had all this talent that wasn't being utilized because maybe it wasn't identified before, or the opportunities in the environment wasn't around it. So
there's a lot there. I just want to jump in for a second.
Yeah.
So stepping back a little bit, you had identified early on that you were able to really go inward and identify your strengths and areas of growth. And therefore you were able to hire for your weaknesses, and you were vulnerable about the same. That takes a bit of self-reflection and cause and effect, Ryan, in the sense of being able to do this in a two-pronged step. So one, what's going on with me internally? And then two, how do I communicate that and exhibit that to my team members so that there's actually validity behind what I'm saying versus discredit? So what was your approach to that? Like, how did you go about it?
Yeah, super interesting. So, I mean, it's not easy. And for me, it probably came easier. I don't know why. Like, it's just, we just kind of, however was born, nature, nurture, I'm not sure. But for certain, I think the skill is, I would say relentlessly self-aware.
Right.
So
right.
I like to, be able to think that I can walk out of here and say, listen, you might not like it. I might not like it, but I'm this. And then I can at least say, well, I want to change that, or I don't want to change that, but at least know that it's actually there. I think blind spots in leadership are one of the hardest things is not being able to step back and say, how are others viewing me? How am I, what's my approach like here?
Right.
And so I think that relentless self-awareness, I don't know how it's taught. I think that's why there's people like you out there who can help us find those sorts of things.
Right.
But when we're aware of, your blind spots and accept them or work to change them,
right.
It really, really helps, because these are such buzzwords when I say things like transparency and authenticity, but I really believe in them from a leadership perspective. I think it's the modern world. Like, I don't think leaders need to be infallible and more knowledgeable than everybody else. I think it's such an old school approach to leadership. I think leadership now is, I always say, for a long time, I've been saying, I'm the chief janitor. I believe my job is to clean up the messes nobody else knows how to clean up. So if you feel comfortable coming in and being like, I have this mess, financial, I don't know how to do this, literally, there's a mouse in the office. Who do I call? You never know what you're going to get. But if we can clear away the path for everybody with talent to go do it, I'd like to be the least talented person in the organization, and leading an organization with an insane amount of talent that just doesn't know how to necessarily take it to market or work with a peer or voice their abilities or their ideas. And so trying to create pathways for individual success is but I think it starts with, if you're not clear and transparent at the very beginning with your team.
Yes.
It's a very, very different thing.
100%. And I enjoy your sarcasm and self-deprecation, Ryan, but I would debate you, because I really think it's a talent to be able to go within and be like, hey, I want to hire smarter people than me to do something bigger than myself, because that's what I'm hearing, right? Like, most times, or most often, it leans back into more of what you had said earlier, that older, quote unquote, or more theoretical leadership styles, in the sense of, I have care and control, and this is my leadership style, versus you being able to say, well, hold on here. Like, no, there's leadership styles, but it's how you use them. It's how you tailor yourself to them based on the environments and the context and the people, which I think is super powerful. The other thing that you said in there earlier, Ryan, was, I was able to really understand my employees or my team members and get things out of them that didn't necessarily happen in past. What would you advise other leaders as to the approach and how to do that?
It's interesting, because when we were first chatting there, I was like, wow, that first, that whole first dialogue is, riddled with cliche terms and not a lot of meat in terms of, it all sounds so easy when you say it, and then how do you actually do it? And I was trying to think of, like, what are some of those tangible things, at risk of you telling me I'm wrong, but because again, I'm a little bit unorthodox on this. So, maybe I do hit it on the head, but, I make a real authentic again, but truthful, a real authentic effort to know all of my employees, like really know them. And I mean know them, not see them.
Right.
So, you know, who are their husbands, who are their wives, what are their kids' names, what drives them, what's their current situation. So when they say, I need a little bit of time to go home, or they're just not in the office, or they're in late, and all of this can be okay. And none of it even has to be questioned, because you actually have some degree of knowledge of who they are as a person, not who they are as an employee.
Right. Right.
And so I really think that investment is so important. So for us, that means as an organization, we are disproportionately social with one another. We bring in food trucks for lunch, not as a reward, but selfishly, so I can see how everybody interacts and what they eat, and when they start laughing, and what makes them laugh, and and really getting to know them. So those are things, and we do all sorts of stuff like that, and we can always chat about some of the techniques that we've done really well. We do a scholarship program for all of the employees, families, extended families, so like even like nieces, nephews, that kind of thing.
Amazing.
From 0 to 18 years old, we do it once a year. We've been doing it for like 6 years. It doesn't cost a lot. We probably do $6,000 in scholarships a year. And we get 75 applications from these kids for their scholarships, and then we have an awards night and we present all the awards. And when you do this, I mean, by the time we're done in our small little office, we've got like 125 people in here: grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, children, wives, husbands. And I mean, I think that's how you really drive a family,
right?
Feeling inside that business, and a commitment and a trust and an understanding, and that allows the foundations for all of us to be the best we can be.
Definitely. I don't think there's anything to correct there, Ryan.
Okay, good. I hate work-life balance. I hate the term.
I do too. It drives me absolutely nuts.
I hate everything about it.
There's no balance. There's never going to be balance. It doesn't.
No, and I find it so combative and yin and yang, and I absolutely hate it. So like, I rail against this. Like, if somebody, I will talk to them at great length when somebody is like, I'm having a hard time, with work-life balance, or I need to get out of here so I can go home. And I'm like, if this is how you feel, then it immediately denotes to me that there is this work is bad, home is good.
Right. I understand you.
Work is good, life is fun, or, funner.
Or vice versa, wherever people are at. Yep.
So we spend a ton of time saying, how do we actually merge all of this? What about if I actually just said, you have to work 8 hours a day? And I'm a huge believer in being in the office. So that's my Cronterian view. But, you can work 8 hours a day, and I don't care where or when. Like, just do your job better than you did it yesterday. And what about if it was just like, work's not bad. You can come in here, and if you need to whip out and go do that, and your headspace is with your kids that day, then don't come in. Why would you be at work being like, man, I don't want to be at work, I should be at home with my sick child? Like, go home with your sick child. Like, totally okay. But, when they're feeling better, just make sure you work Saturday, and do it like naturally, like just actually find a natural cadence where everything is good, and you love what you do. And so, how does that affect me? Like, I'm working, 16-hour days, 7 days a week. But I don't think my kids would ever look at me and say that I'm working, because I'll put my phone down and I'll smile at them. Like, it's not like I'm like, stop, I have to get this done. I'm focused on the laptop, therefore I'm not part of your life. It's not like that at all. It's just like, they're seeing me with a smile on, leading, chatting. They're hearing me have a business call in the car, while they're hanging out, and we just blend that all together. And I think they see this like fulfillment and happiness, and they'd have a hard time ever separating me from work or from personal. And anyways, I go off a little bit on that, but I think it's such an important thing nowadays. If we can find a place of, cadence where work is such a joy that it is personal. Right.
What comes up for me is work-life integration. And I subscribe to a lot of what you're saying, aside from the fact of, in some circumstances, two things come up for me. What drives me crazy is when people in positions of power talk about their employees like their family to create that psychological contract, but they don't treat them like family, right? What you're subscribing to, or what I'm hearing you, is that you have a community and it feels family orientated. Like, there is authenticity in what you're saying, Ryan, which is absolutely amazing. the other piece that comes up for me is work-life integration. Yes. However, when you see your team members are struggling in the perspective of, because oftentimes team members come into the workplace that they're not going to be like, I'm going to do a shit job for Ryan today. Mm-hmm. They're going to be like, I want to do the best job ever. And I don't know how to do it. So I'm going to stress myself out until I get there. So I feel as leaders, the onus is on us to be able to help mentor, not manage, the work-life integration pieces. Mm-hmm. And so that when you really know your people and what motivates them, for some people, they really do need that black and white. Work is work, sure. Personal is personal, and I need that divide or I can't shut off and it stresses me out. If that's their persona, then it's leaning into them to help mentor so that it fits still with from a culture or company fit, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. And I think that I would say that, and through both many personality, acumen tests, et cetera, on myself, the risk of actually this from a leadership perspective is mine is so authentic to a core that I can be taken advantage of. That's the risk side of this is actually I'm the one who's going, I trust you. I'll build this for you. I'll do whatever. And then I'm hurt when they don't treat me the same way back. 100%. They don't trust me the same way I've trusted them, or they take advantage of me, big one. And so I'm prone to being taken advantage of.
But
and I mean, and I'm okay with that. Again, this is a bit that almost goes full circle to the self-awareness of going, I'm aware that's my style.
Right.
I'm aware that I've had experts tell me, be careful on this, because the flip side is, you can be disappointed and this can be hurtful because you open yourself up and maybe even you share too much about your personal and your family and they actually don't need that or want that. But at least when I march out, I'm cognizant of the fact that I'm like, listen, this is a side effect of this style of leadership is that, there's pros and cons to all of them. And I'm willing to take this con and this risk for, I don't know, the abundance it brings me by giving, that I get to take back from helping people be their best selves.
From a mindset perspective, I hear you. I dub those as, well, I can't even own this. A coaching client of mine dubs it as jellyfish stings, right? So it's when we're dealing with emotions that do not necessarily fill our cup, i.e. feeling taken advantage of. As leaders, what if we looked at it from a perspective of it's not a con or a negative thing that I just have to absorb because of my leadership style, but rather I understand that people aren't the same as me and how they act isn't towards me. It's just how they are currently in their life. That could be a good thing, a bad thing, an indifferent thing, but that my job as a leader is to be able to, what I say, ride the waves of those jellyfish stings of emotions through that feeling of being taken advantage of onto what can I learn from this? So, right. So it's not exactly a cause and effect. It's contextual in the sense of, okay, well, in the future, when I see these things happen again, maybe I get a little bit more curious first before this happens. Right. So I guess what I'm saying is from a leadership perspective, I feel like there's a lot of unlearning in the sense of letting go of expectations and the emotions that are associated with the same.
Yeah. And building that resilience. I mean, so
very much.
I agree with everything you said. And I've gone through lots of therapy to get there. No, I mean, it's certainly I will have built more and more of that.
Of course.
For certain individuals, it's going to be hard to open up and take a style like mine. That's actually going to be hard, and it'll be really easy for them to manage the, those letdowns. Because they're already more well equipped on that side of things. On my side, it's taken me longer. It was like natural to go out there and be open, but longer to build the resilience to say, actually, it's not personal. It actually has nothing even to do with me. I actually even make this about me when it's about them. I actually didn't lead them. This isn't their happy spot. This is uncomfortable for them. They actually want 9 to 5. And if I really care about them, so moving through that, I think you're absolutely right. It's just, inherently, I have to look in the mirror every morning and be like, people like me. It's going to be great. You're going to be okay.
Those positive self-affirmations, they really do
I've
work.
for sure gotten tougher now. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And you take a few bumps and you start to become a little more resilient and a lot more understanding. And that's that experience I didn't have 17 years ago that now I do. When
100%.
I'm on board probably, I mean, I don't know, in the 17 years, it'd be crazy, but through acquisitions and through, natural attrition and hiring, I probably met 400 people. Lara, we probably onboarded 400 people. And I've offboarded probably 400 people, ironically. So, and each of those is those key learning moments.
Right.
I meet every before they start, every single employee. The last meeting is with me, and I'm certain that it's terrifying for most of them. Not that I'm particularly terrifying, but it's terrifying because the last meeting is the CEO wants to meet you and he wants to just chat. So we have coffee. I don't have one interview. By the time they're meeting with me, they are very clear the only thing I'm interviewing for is a fit.
Right.
That's it. Like I don't even know one questionable competency, nothing. I'm like, tell me about yourself. That's it. And
what have you learned from that question?
That's great. Well, I've learned to trust my gut more. Probably, I would say, be very interesting. By the time they land in my seat, or in my office, it would be unusual for me to overrule HR, hiring manager, everybody, and say, yeah, no, actually, I did not have a good vibe there. Because I really want to support the process as well. And, and I'm also telling them by the time they get to my office, like, you better make sure that they're going to, like, it's supposed to be like a fait accompli. Like, it's just like a nice thing. Like, have a coffee with the CEO. But honestly, I wish I trusted my gut more. Like, amazing how much that just that half an hour, I probably have regretted not enough actually pushing back on HR and hiring manager and saying, you know what, like, again, no questions about competency, etc. But I just think this is doomed to fail. They're not going to vibe well with you. And, interestingly, sorry, I go off as I explore that myself. But, one of the biggest things I think I find out in that is actually, are they going to work with their like the hiring manager? Almost like a blind date. You're sitting there and you're like, I don't know, I'm the dad. And this is like, man, I'm like, I don't approve. This is going to be a bad marriage. This is not going to work. This is not going to work.
Well, you're not entirely wrong. Like, coming out of the comic relief there, Ryan, we spend like over 80% of our lives working, right?
Right.
So it's really important to have manager and team member fit. It's important to have fit past the management team. It's important to have fit with the culture. And so I think that you are taking a position, Ryan, of, utmost responsibility in helping with that process to make sure that it is the right fit.
For sure. And, that's, you made a really nice segue there for me, but, I can't help it. And I don't think this is it's not one of my super strong outward mentality that I would like to share all the time. It's just inherently who I am. I can't change it. I played a lot of sports as a kid, and I view business and teams very often. I have to relate it to sport. It's just, again, it's what I know. So I don't love necessarily, it's a bit of a combative kind of thing, sport. And like, I loathe like leaders who talk like war mentality, let's attack the field. And you're like, oh, it's just, it really makes me cringe. So I don't even necessarily love this element of it. But the segue for that, though, is that I spend a tremendous amount of my time, and we didn't talk about this in advance, so a tremendous amount of my time is actually about the team dynamic. It's not about the individual.
Tell me more.
So, and that comes from like my coaching, my playing, and then the analogies that follow are the ones that I hate, that, they're two team, they're two sport related, but, I could have a hockey team full of superstars and they're a horrible hockey team. And you can have a hockey team that vibes really, really well and everybody knows their position and they work tremendously well together and they're a way better hockey team. And 100% that translates to the office.
And I don't think that that's an ick thing. I think that most people that are listening to the podcast right now, if we can antiquate sports to leadership, they would actually learn more. People understand sports, right?
Well, and I say I'm a simple man. I'm a simple man. And I understand that. So then it's a way that really makes sense for me because, I think a lot of us would default to going out and being like, I'm going to hire the best person for that job. And then you go separately 2 months later, I'm going to hire the best person for that job. I'm going to hire the best IT manager. I'm going to hire the best HR manager. I'm going to hire the best accountant that you can find. It's kind of logical. It kind of It's kind of like how the process is built. It's expected. It's expected.
Right.
And then all of a
Right.
sudden you end up with the best in everything, and you go, none of these people want to work together. None of them are collaborative. They all have different interests, and this whole thing's breaking down.
100%.
And if right at the very beginning you go out and you go, actually, I need somebody who's going to be totally okay with the fact that the person they're going to be working beside is a super strong, powerful woman,
Mm-hmm.
not the best accountant. An accountant
Mm-hmm.
who's going to be totally comfortable working in that seat with this incredibly talented individual who might be threatening and da 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 da. So they've got to be super self-assured, or they got to be whatever. And then I got to be okay with this sales coordinator who is going to be okay with somebody who's extremely short communicator.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're like, that doesn't drive me. It doesn't bother me at all. Actually, I have thick skin. They're actually, they don't take it personally. That's just their communication style. And I think every leader has the ability to really step back, and as soon as they hear and listen that and realize that that's the role, and I suppose HR, which you have a lot to say in that, but reminding maybe the leader as well. But you're not hiring the most skilled person. You're hiring the best person for that job.
Definitely. Definitely. And one thing that I cringe is when I hear the word soft skills, because there's nothing soft about human skills. Like they're core competencies, or it's the larger pieces that we look to hire, as you're identifying with, and also offboard or fire. 9 times out of 10, I haven't had managers that have come to me and said, hey, Johnny just doesn't get it. He's not competent, albeit it happens. But 90% of the time, if I was involved with a termination, it had to do with their human or their core skills.
I think it's one of the most factual. If we needed to measure everything that you and I have been talking about, I would even probably go on a higher percentage. Of the 400 people I probably had to transition at some point out of the, in 17 years. It sounds like a lot, but it's not. I would go 95 to 99% have been let go because of either because we had no choice, like economic conditions. I didn't want to let them go. Like I either didn't want to let them go, or it was fit in personality.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't skill. Like I have a really, really hard time trying to remember one person where I let them go, where I was like, you actually just can't do this job. You're incompetent at this job.
I'm laughing at the way that you said, not what you said.
Great attitude, but they're incompetent. Like I have a hard time thinking of one.
That's fair.
I let somebody go with a great attitude, but they literally just did not have the skills to get it done. Because like so often we can build through those skills if you have a great attitude.
Definitely. And what you're really pointing to is those other quadrants. So it's like, what are the team dynamics within your organization, having high levels of self-awareness and being able to hire, so that when we talk about fit, what we're really saying is, do we have adaptive communicators? Do we have people that, organically have higher levels of self-confidence? If not, can they work on that? Do they have higher levels of empathy or self-compassion? Can they work on that? Are they able to be a problem solver and analytical? We think that that's a core skill or a technique, but in actuality, you're leaning into things like cause and effect from an EIQ perspective. So organically, what you're picking up on are all these different quadrants, because we have 7 of them, I think, if I remember correctly, that really identify, quote unquote, what are fit.
Right.
So it's like, how are you as a spiritual person? How are you from a resilient perspective? How are you from grit? How are you from an EIQ perspective? And then IQ comes into play as well. And I think those are amazing things to really focus in on. You had said something earlier too in the green room when you were talking about growth. It was, you strongly felt that it was and I'm just kind of surmising a trend here, Ryan, but you had felt that it's a leader's responsibility to build the bandwidth when it comes to your team members in the sense of their capacity before you scale. I want to hear more about that. I'm really intrigued by that thought process.
So through my experience, so that's now a realization. This wasn't like I wasn't armed with this. I didn't read this in a book and then implement it and then implement it. I've implemented it now successfully-ish, probably in the process as well of really realizing it, through doing it wrong before. brute force. So, we talked a little bit about, my experience. I don't have the experience in a high growth company. I've always run a profitable, diligent business that, would grow 5% a year.
Right.
And we would, so to get bigger growth, we'd acquire.
Right.
And then, that started to become a core competency because I've done it, maybe a dozen times type thing.
Right.
And so, it just became who I am. And somebody else, I've got lots of friends who are in, high growth. They invest for growth, or, they lose money, they grow 35% a year, or 3,000 or 300. And so it's a little bit of a different thing. But my experience on that acquisition has been, I've learned when you acquire, it's really hard to merge cultures together. Almost impossible to merge a culture.
Yes.
You can merge objectives, and you can even merge teams, but merging cultures is a long process, because basically, I'm a firm believer that the values and the culture are lived, they're behaved, they're not taught. So, we can plant a stake in the ground, but it's way out. And then people might start to, coalesce towards those goals, and the cultures might start to move closer together, but it's only as how fast that they're naturally going to move towards those. So that's a first mistake. And then the second one is, inherently, I've acknowledged the fact that when we acquire a company, it's going to be different than the one that you've been leading for a long time. Like, you're not going to walk in and have, if there's 50 employees in the company that's acquired, all 50 are not going to want to work for you. They're just not. It's impossible that you're going to come in and they're going to be like, this guy's amazing. I totally buy into this leadership and this accountability and this new style, because you're buying a business. It's going to be different than what it was before, and so therefore there's usually more turnover than you'd think, or want to plan. I want to buy this business. It's going to have great established leadership. They're going to be totally great, and it doesn't work out that well. I think it's extremely unusual to walk in and expect that, one person's styles is going to marry with an entire organization's styles.
Right.
And so therefore, you need leadership capacity to realize. So you make this investment in this new company, and then you go, holy smokes, I'm bound by the leadership there that's not on board, voluntarily or involuntarily, and it's totally okay. But then that slows everything down. So now I've learned to, pre-acquisition, have bandwidth with my trusted leaders who I know who can go in and I can trust to embrace take the ball and run with it.
Right.
So they're ready to go. They're like, put me in, coach, I'm ready to go. And I have that. So before, they had the skill, but they didn't have the capacity. I was running it. They had a full-time job, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I need your help. And then where do you put them? And then if you take them off your current business, the business starts to falter. You put them onto you don't put them on the new business, it falters. So investing for that growth is, I guess, full circle to where we're talking about high growth companies that have to invest. It's the same in acquisition. You need to pre-acquisition, build your organization to be able to manage that.
Yeah. And so when you're speaking to build your organization, what I'm hearing is, investing in your team members from a skill set perspective.
Yeah, skill and capacity as well.
Right.
Like understanding they need a little buffer. They need a little buffer. So we can invest. And I think that skill investment is something I'm getting better and better at. So helping them to continue to be like, I actually want them to work themselves out of a job now. That's great. Like, actually get to a spot where you're like, I can do a lot more, coach. Sports analogies. I can do a lot more, like I'm ready to go. I can play more minutes. Like I got this. My team, I've got, Sally, who's taken over half of my job because I've invested in her skills, and I'm ready for more. Let's go. So skills and capacity, I think, are the two that are critical.
Right. And in your experience as learning through these motions, when you're looking to scale your organization, like, what skills and capacity specifically do you look at now that you've had the previous, I guess, tenure under your belt?
Yeah. Super, super great question. So I said one, and it is, and then you said something, which is soft skills, and as a swear word, which I agree with, but I said trust, right?
Yeah.
Trust them. And I don't trust anybody when I go into a new company. because trust is based off of experience. They're shared experiences. That's how you build trust. So
Fair.
you can't just immediately go in and be like 100%. You can be like, I trust you. Like, sure you can, but you don't really like until you have mutual trust. It takes time and experiences together. So for me to, trust for me is having a leader who I know will come to me and say, we're in big trouble. Or I don't know how to do this, or I'm really concerned about this part of the company, or there's not enough money in the bank. We're going to run out of money soon. So scary conversations with high degrees of confidence, I think is the beneficiary of a trusting relationship. So, and that is a massive skill that one has to, is the confidence to have the trust with each other.
Definitely.
Kind of go off on a tangent there, but it is by far the most important thing for me. Is actually, it's so often with people, they have the skill, they just don't put their hand up to say, I think the train's going in the wrong direction, or I think you're on the wrong plane. We're going to Calgary. I think you want to go to Edmonton. I cannot say this, and you're going, please, I'm actually hiring you to say this. This is what we want you to do, and
right.
So I think that's a big one, and then having an alignment on leadership. So when I bring in capacity, I want them to exhibit the type of behaviors we want all the employees to have. So this is top down. It's like, doctor, heal thyself. We have to, if we want them to be vulnerable and honest, then we should be vulnerable and honest. And so very consistent leadership. So my style mirrors my leaders' styles as well. So at that top level, we all kind of walk and talk the same values.
And I think it's necessary. I really do, because, and I agree with what you had said a while back, Ryan, in the sense that you can't tell an organization what their culture is. You can't tell them how to live the values. It's something that happens organically from within the organization. But what is really important is what I'm hearing is that from a leadership perspective, we have to have unification. We have to have the same sort of maybe not the same sort of communication style per se, but we're saying the same things and we're acting the same way. Because without that piece, that's when I feel, in my experience that I've seen, is perceived unfairness, or it's the water cooler talk. There's a more allowances for that as well, or there's disconnect, and then which also impedes trust. So I definitely feel like you have a lot of those building blocks in place, and it's been really advantageous to see, from an EQ side perspective, how these things are really being lived and breathed in the smaller scale perspective of everyday stuffs.
Said so much more astutely than I did. It's lovely. I agree. That's why you're the professional.
Listen, Ryan, I could really chat with you for days on ends about this stuff. This is fantastic. But before we go, for our listenership, can you tell us where to find you and where people can get more info about this wonderful company, Alive?
Well, thank you so much. Yeah. So our website is alive.com. So that's a beautiful URL that makes it really easy for everybody.
Yes.
On a personal level, I'm very open, but my Instagram is a great place to find me from a personal and professional level, because I believe those two things should marry together. So I am at Ryan D. Benn. So that's David. So Ryan D. Benn on Instagram is a great place. I'm a pretty open book. So anybody can reach out to me anytime they want, if they want to chat more, if they want to learn more about Alive. And thanks for having me.
Yes, my pleasure, Ryan. Take good care.
Thanks, Ange.
Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuity Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.